Hi, good morning from Charmed Life Therapy. Good morning here in the UK anyway. Pew pew, pew pew. Kevin Fritz is on the case, much as I suspected he would be. And it's almost worth the aggro that you get from Lively's side or Isabela Ferrer's side now, which seems to be equally hostile. It's almost worth having to plough through theirs in order to just get a little Kevin Fritz nugget, because Kevin Fritz just doesn't go on and on and on, and he doesn't answer things needlessly that he doesn't need to answer. It's like he doesn't, in his response, bother touching on this idea of that they had submitted this hallucinatory AI case law when they were trying to justify the whole indemnification policy to do with Isabela Ferrer and her part in It Ends With Us saga, as Perez would say. But yeah, he didn't bother addressing anything that was unnecessary, because it literally boils down to just accept the damn subpoena. What the hell is your problem? And there's also a really, I mean, they're so on it. It's like they keep showing the judge and the opposition, right, if you've got a problem with this, then we'll withdraw it, but you can't have it either. And that's what he's done here in a rather bold move. So I'm going to read this letter because it'll cheer you all up. And yeah, so it's dated August 18th. Dear Judge Lyman, as counsel for Wayfarer Studios, LLC, Justin Baldoni, etc., etc., we write in response to Isabela and actually he's clarifying there, collectively the Wayfarer parties, because as we know yesterday, this guy Mitchell Sanderson, whatever his name is, kept saying Baldoni, Baldoni, Baldoni in reference to the Wayfarer parties, as if it was solely Justin Baldoni that was supposedly at fault. So we write in response to Isabela Ferrer's opposition to the Wayfarer party's motion to serve her by alternative means for the pendency of this action. The opposition is primarily an inappropriate attack upon Mr. Baldoni and his counsel, and in brackets it says, in violation of the order dated August 8th, 2025, docket 581. I think that'll be the Perez one, isn't it, where the judge says, have some decorum, basically. Relating to matters not before the court, i.e. indemnification, which isn't Lyman's problem, and irrelevant to whether Ms. Ferrer should be served via alternative means. Ms. Ferrer played the role of young Lily Bloom in the film It Ends With Us, the film. After Ms. Ferrer completed her work on the film, she expressed her gratitude to Mr. Baldoni, stating that she had an incredible experience and praised him for creating a comfortable, safe space for her. Rule 26A1 requires parties to disclose the identity of each individual likely to have discoverable information, along with the subjects of that information that the disclosing party may use to support its claims or defences. According to Miss Lively's amended initial disclosures, and then there's some redactions before it opens up a little space that says, therefore Ms. Lively identified, more redaction. And then in terms of an address, Ms. Lively's amended initial disclosures identified, which presumably is an address for Isabela Ferrer. In February 2025, Ms. Lively issued a subpoena to Ms. Ferrer, who was represented by Mr. Michelman, or Michelman, however you say it. Presumably, Mr. Michelman accepted service of the subpoena on Ms. Ferrer's behalf without objection. In July 2025, the Wayfarer parties subpoenaed Ms. Ferrer for documents that she either neglected to produce or were not requested by Ms. Lively's subpoena, docket 6181. The Wayfarer parties twice requested that Mr. Michelman accept service of their subpoena, a common professional courtesy that Mr. Michelman likely granted to Ms. Lively's counsel in connection with her subpoena. Mr. Michelman ignored the Wayfarer party's requests. Instead, Mr. Michelman prepared and filed a robust opposition to the motion for alternative service, in brackets, most of which does not pertain to service, without explaining why he refused to accept service of the Wayfarer party's subpoena or why his client is so reticent to testify. Mr. Michelman seems more focused on It Ends With Us movie's purported contractual obligation to indemnify Ms. Ferrer and cover his fees. Ironically, Mr. Michelman's actions have unnecessarily increased those fees by creating issues where none should exist, and that's probably an important point for their liability for paying out as well, because it's like we said the other day, as has been pointed out, that Blake is driving up the costs of her suit all of the time with a load of unnecessary stuff, unnecessary subpoenas, unnecessary objections, unnecessary letters. And like, should she win, then she's going to expect Justin to pay for all of that. And there's going to be a process whereby she has to prove what was relevant to do or what was unnecessary to do. And Kevin's got a good one in there because he's saying this is an instance of fees being driven up. So when it comes to the other thing, they can present this, I would imagine, to say they were doing things unnecessarily and that's not our obligation to have to pay. I would suspect that is where that is going. With respect to service, Ms. Ferrer's opposition suggests that the Wayfarer parties were not diligent in their efforts to serve her, but should have reached out to Ms. Ferrer's talent agent or conducted a skip trace. Naturally, we deemed Ms. Ferrer's counsel, and not her talent agent, as the appropriate person with whom to communicate concerning the subpoena. As for the latter, we assure the court that the two addresses at which service of the subpoena was attempted were not derived out of thin air. We are happy to share the results of our due diligence with the court, albeit that seems unnecessary given that Ms. Ferrer has counsel who has now appeared. The opposition alleges that in attempting personal service, in brackets after her lawyer refused to accept service on her behalf, Mr. Baldoni is harassing Ms. Ferrer and attempting to draw her deeper into litigation and disputes that she has done her best to avoid. It was not the Wayfarer parties who first subpoenaed Ms. Ferrer, it was Ms. Lively, and again, Mr. Michelman appears to have accepted service of her subpoena without objection. Ms. Lively should not be permitted to obtain discovery from Ms. Ferrer while Ms. Ferrer and her counsel frustrate all effort by the Wayfarer parties to obtain the discovery critical to the preparation of their defence. Given the circumstances, the Wayfarer parties are willing to stipulate that none of the parties will use any communication to, from, or concerning Ms. Ferrer, or any testimony from her in any manner in this action. That stipulation will satisfy Ms. Ferrer's apparent desire to avoid involvement in the litigation and trial. If the other parties decline to enter into such a stipulation, and Ms. Ferrer and her counsel continue to resist service, the court should enter an order excluding Ms. Ferrer as a witness and excluding the use of any communication to, from, or concerning Ms. Ferrer in any manner in this action. Is that not fabulous? Because it's almost like he's not communicating to Sanford Michelman, isn't it? You can tell exactly who he's communicating to in this letter, and it's not Judge Lyman either. So that's interesting, isn't it? Because what it basically says is, as well, we're so confident we don't even need Isabela Ferrer. Are you so confident that you don't need Isabela Ferrer in this matter? That to me is what this is saying. She's not that important to us that if she's gonna make such a big fuss of it, and it's going to be such an ordeal for her, and it's so harassing, that fine, we won't have it, but you don't get to have it either. And another thing that I was thinking over this whole Isabela Ferrer business is, consciously or subconsciously, there could be some kind of weird element of Blake wanting to destroy this girl's career, because she inserted herself into a relationship with Isabela Ferrer where, passing pleasantries could have sufficed, basically. She adopted her as such. Now, you could say she adopted her in order to influence her and create a problem for Justin. But was there also an element of, this is like an almost spitting image, younger looking version of her, slimmer, no ties, no kids, free to pick up and go anywhere in the world and do any kind of movie and get any kind of praise, any kind of Oscars, Emmys. I nearly said Grammys, but you know what I mean. Was there an element? She almost like looking at her and dressing her like she was almost looking in a mirror type thing, putting her jewellery on and playing with her like she was a doll. Did she not want the doll to do better than she was doing? You know, it's often a case that somebody will take you under their wing, under the auspices of protecting you and elevating you and making sure you're okay and making sure you're safe and protected and all of this. But they're actually squirreling you away for their own reasons. It's like how a narcissist will, you know, segregate you from your friends on a gradual basis and start making you question whether these friends are good for you and all of that. I just wonder if there's some of that in this weird relationship between Blake and Isabela Ferrer. That has she become, you know what I mean? Because you start not knowing what is real, don't you? So does Isabela look at Justin now as some kind of threat or harasser, as she kept saying via her attorneys in this letter? We know what happens when you're in a narcissistic relationship. Your view of the world gets totally skewed. And that seems to be what's happening. So the letter concludes with, finally, to the extent that Ms. Ferrer believes that the Wayfarer subpoena is overbroad or otherwise objectionable, which it is not, she is entitled to serve formal objections thereto once the service issue has been resolved, a point that dispels any ludicrous notion of a quid pro quo in connection with the subpoena. Because that's what they were saying, weren't they, yesterday, that implying that Wayfarer was threatening, you can have this if you accept the subpoena, like quid pro quo, that it was like they wouldn't do what they were obligated to do unless they accepted that subpoena. So like as if they were trying to force the subpoena and force everything to do with that subpoena along with it. So for the reasons set forth above, as well as those contained in the Wayfarer party's initial papers, the Wayfarer party's motion to serve Ms. Ferrer via alternative means for the pendency of this action should be granted. Respectfully submitted, Kevin Fritz. I just think he's awesome. He maybe even kind of looks forward to these snotty things from opposing counsel because it gives him an opportunity to practice his skills, maybe. So other than that, which will be interesting to see what happens, because Judge Lyman should literally just say, in this instance, cut the nonsense, just accept the subpoena and don't bring this indemnity issue to my court because it's none of my business and I'm really not interested. If it was Wayfarer making that motion yesterday, that's what Lyman would do. So it'd be interesting to see what comes of that. So the other thing that's happened, it's almost like because the indemnity issue got raised and everybody got reminded, suddenly there's a reminder kind of on the docket related to the fact that Blake, there's a second, God, where am I now? There's a second amended complaint, isn't there, of Blake's? So Stephanie Jones and Jen Abel has answered that basically and reiterated her claims on Jones' works in terms of indemnity, because she's saying, well, most of what happened when I was employed by you, so you get to pay some of my legal stuff, which of course would absolutely enrage Stephanie Jones. So it's like suddenly there was the talk of indemnity yesterday and suddenly Stephanie Jones' side said, shit, we hadn't answered that second amended complaint and Jen's responses, and we need to sort that out because we don't want to pay that. So there's now a thing on the docket saying, can we use that argument from the last time to say that we don't want to cover Jen, we don't want to be indemnifiable or whatever the correct word is for Jen Abel. So I just thought I'd go back and read that because I don't think I've ever read this. So this is Stephanie Jones's side objecting to have to indemnify Jen Abel, really. And it reads like a bad novel, the bit I've skimmed through this morning, but we'll whiz through it because I don't want to make a long video, because being in the Scottish Highlands and not having access to full fibre broadband or cable. It takes forever for me to upload a video, so if you ever wonder why I'm slow in responding to something, it's because I might be hypnotising somebody or creating a recording for them or something, or I might just have incredibly slow Wi-Fi. So desperate to avoid paying the piper for her actions, Jennifer Abel throws yet additional outrageous allegations at her former employer Jones Works, but her ever-increasing parade of inapplicable statutes and claims cannot change the reality. Abel went rogue. She ruthlessly pursued her own career advancement by leading an unsanctioned smear campaign, and pinning it on her employer Jones Works, whilst contemporaneously with Melissa Nathan spearheading a Business Insider hit piece against her boss Jones, stealing confidential documents, poaching clients, and seeking to ruin Jones' decades-built reputation. One might argue a decades-built reputation of what exactly? Her duplicitous plan nearly succeeded until Jones Works caught Abel red-handed. Now Abel brazenly seeks indemnification from the employer she betrayed and sought to ruin. It reads like a Mills and Boon novel, this, or that sort of Dastardly and Muttley or something. Her claims are as meritless as they are outlandish and should be dismissed. Abel's claim for indemnification fails under even minimal scrutiny because such relief is unavailable where she was acting in her own interests, which she actively hid from and were opposed to those of Jones Works. That was exactly what Abel was doing. Abel admits that starting as early as July 29th, 2024, weeks before she left Jones Works and continuing through August, the exact time she was engaging in the conduct for which she now seeks indemnification, she was communicating with co-conspirator Nathan about their scheme for Abel to leave Jones Works, poach its clients and profit at Jones Works' expense. So then there's a string of text messages. Can I see these? I need to blow them up. So what date was this? 29th of July 24. And it's from Melissa Nathan to Jen. I know, and once you are gone, we will be on accounts together and make really good money and be happy. And that's, if you read that out of context, that sounds like somebody that's not really all that intelligent in a way, because it's like simplifying life in effect. But it's kind of the things you say, isn't it, where you're trying to make light of something that's probably going to be quite difficult to go through. It's like, just focus on the very simplistic. It's the kind of thing you say to a friend to reassure them when you know it's going to be like really, really shitty to achieve, isn't it? And then another one from Melissa Nathan. I think that is the 6th of August 24. Let's just keep it steering that way, and you take this effing client and never talk to her again, I swear to God. And that presumably is related to Baldoni. Etienne's about to bark, so I'm going to pause it. It's the bin men. Did I say that? Abel admits that while employed at Jones Works and during the period for which she seeks indemnification, she was boasting to Nathan about her overt hostility to Jones Works. And this is on the 13th of August from Jen Abel. We are going to war. And then another one. I feel so alive. Ha 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 ha. Just, they don't really get irony, do they, the other side, and having a bit of fun and like kind of trying to make light of something that's quite difficult to deal with. And like 13th of August, so you're talking like post-premiere, they know that Leslie Sloan is ignoring them and talking to media outlets. They know that Stephanie Jones is feeding information after being specifically told not to feed things against Baldoni's expressed wishes. Jamie Heath was in contact with the do-nothing, basically, wasn't he, during that kind of time period. Abel admits that she intended to shake down Jones Works on her way out. 21st of August. By the way, I'm having my offboarding this morning with our Chief of Staff, a joke, because Steph won't face me, and you should see the list I made of things to bring up. Well, that didn't go well for her, as we know now, did it? And then holding them hostage, she said in a separate message. Abel admits that in parallel with the actions for which she now seeks indemnification, she and Nathan were encouraging Wayfarer and Baldoni to breach their contract with Jones Works so they could steal them as clients. And most people would argue, with the knowledge kind of that we've all heard now, that Baldoni already had his foot out of the door, basically. And possibly, if he didn't feel confident in Jen, he'd have just broke ties altogether. But he obviously felt like he got on with Jen, that he could trust Jen. He knew she was leaving anyway. You know, it wasn't only this case for why Jen was leaving Jones Works. She wanted to start her own firm. She'd had enough of the attitude that she was dealing with. Come here, Missy. Come here, Etienne. Right, so from Melissa Nathan on, oh gosh, it looks, I'm not sure if that says 8th of September. Let's just keep it steering that way, and you take this fucking client and never talk to her again, I swear to God. I don't know if that's the right date, but it's so tiny to blow up. From Jen Abel, exactly. And then follow, and there seems to be a gap then, and there's another message from Melissa Nathan. And I'm just going to step out of line before I go to bed and tell you Jen is amazing. She's so loyal. She loves you so much, and you have to go with her. And he was like, oh my God, of course I'm going with her. Don't kill me. Okay, bye. So that's kind of, I guess, implying that Melissa Nathan convinced him to trust Jen and go with her. But they weren't going to stay with Jones Works anyway. They had no interest, no trust, no feeling of safety in Jones Works at that point, you know. And then Jen Abel, haha, love you. And then Abel admits that throughout this period, she facilitated and regularly communicated with a Business Insider reporter, including through at least 4 phone calls, one more than 27 minutes long, and numerous text messages with the reporter, and text messages coordinating the reporter's outreach to others to actively undermine Jones's reputation and Jones Works business through a hit piece about Jones and Jones Works. Stephanie, are you aware there is a kill story dropping this week on you? And if you hadn't have blown us up, we would not have been in such a bad place. That's from Melissa Nathan. Abel admits that the reporter thanked her for her help with the story. And that's from Katie Warren to Jen Abel. Story is up. Thanks again for your help. Abel admits that as she was working at Jones Works, supposedly in the interests of its then client Baldoni, she was simultaneously trashing him behind his back and crediting the very rumours she was working to suppress. So from Jen Abel, and this seems to be January 1st of, must be 13th of Jan 24. Every time I'm looking at text, I'm thinking, is that reversed month and day for Americans? But this is where she's basically calling Justin, it's so cringy. And then Jen Abel again, his face. And then Blake was probably grossed out too, but who that's from and to other than Jen Abel is blanked out on this one. And the thing is, this is why this case has been part of the reason why this case is so important, because we all do this kind of stuff. We all slate people behind each other's backs, and we say things that are hurtful and nasty that we shouldn't say, that later we generally often will literally change our impression about somebody anyway, the more we spend time with them and the more we get to know them and the more we see where they're coming from. So yeah, and filed a cease and desist, and that's from Jen Abel. And another one from Jen Abel. I can't stand him. He's so pompous. Men's retreat during release. Is he crazy? And being off the grid for the summer because he's just so overworked. Like, calm down. You're not that important and nobody gives a shit how hard your life is. But the thing is, we should argue that Justin Baldoni is actually doing what more and more of us should be doing. Because work isn't supposed to be your life. Your downtime is supposed to be your life. And the other things, the fun things that you do with your life to decompress are the things that we should be prioritising. But they're kind of criticising him there for prioritising his own well-being and such. And they're looking at him as that woo-woo type of person that hasn't got a grip on life, basically, aren't they? They've done what Blake has done, in effect, formed an opinion of him based on the fact that he's a different set of values basically. And then from Jen Abel, as well as somebody else, to somebody else that isn't named. Abel also admits that during this time, Nathan was also not safe from Abel's trash talk, labelling her an expletive even as she worked with her to harm and steal from Jones and Jones' works. From and to are blanked out other than Jen Abel. MN kind of talks out both sides of her mouth. You think? Somebody's responded. She's a piece of S. And Abel admits that when Jones' works finally discovered her self-serving thievery and duplicity and limited her access to its electronic system, she boasted about evading the company's efforts to stop her theft. And this is from somebody and Jen Abel to somebody and Alicia Jessup. Yes, pretty much I had my way around that S because I have like hundreds of different emails for each domain that I own, so she can suck it. And maybe I shouldn't be laughing, but honest to God, this is the problem with human beings just in general, isn't it? You know what I mean? That we're all living on that bloody ego-minded level where it's that one-upmanship and the rest of it. And just if we were all that much kinder to her, if we were all a bit more Justin Baldoni, everybody's lives would be that much easier, you know what I mean? And we'd all have a bigger friendship group, wouldn't we, as well? Abel's claim that she is entitled to indemnification from the employer she was actively betraying is diabolically illogical, legally deficient, and must be dismissed. I don't know if I'm going to read all of this because it's ever so long, and I don't really want to make an awful long video for you. Abel also cannot plausibly plead that she was acting in the scope of her employment or as Jones' Works agent when she was actively refusing to follow Jones' Works instructions and hiding her activity from the CEO, and now antithetically alleges that Jones was interfering in Abel's efforts to conduct the very smear campaign at issue here. Abel proudly pleads that she advised Wayfarer to hire Nathan, knowing full well that Jones opposed this recommendation. And the thing is, everybody was tied together, wasn't they? Like Jed and Brian and Melissa, they'd all worked with each other previously. They trusted each other. They would have been happy to work with each other. So, of course, you're going to recommend people that you know can gel together and work together. So, counterclaims that Abel objected to Jones inserting herself into the mix of working on behalf of Wayfarer in early August 2024, and that Wayfarer instructed Jones to cease all activities on behalf of Wayfarer and Baldoni. She even has the audacity to claim that she was working in the scope of her employment at Jones' Works in the same breath as attacking Jones' Works CEO for refusing to be sidelined. But texts that Abel admits to sending and receiving confirm that she and Nathan did sideline Jones and Jones' Works, including when those two co-conspirators ironically commiserated about the misogynistic nature of their vile campaign against Jones and Lively, and unbelievably attempted to blame Lively for their ruthless campaign. So from Melissa Nathan and to Jen Abel, it's actually sad because it just shows you how people really want to hate on women. And from Jen Abel, I know it is sad, but then like, don't be a see you next Tuesday. Which, are they saying anything that's not true? That kind of hasn't been proved at this point. Abel's contribution claim also fails legally, factually and logically. Not only does Abel fail to identify a single action by Jones' Works that allegedly contributed to the harm Abel inflicted on Lively, she fails to even try to plead any of the required elements of this claim. This is not surprising, as the apparent core of Abel's ever-evolving claim is that Jones' Works somehow colluded with Lively. But Jones' Works could not possibly have contributed to the harm that Abel and her co-conspirators caused Lively by colluding with Lively. Abel's fantastical claims, ranging from collusion to contribution, are unified in one respect: they do not pass the smell test. Abel's assertion that Jones' Works, who she is suing in related litigation in this court, must now fund her defence in litigation that seeks to call her to account for her misconduct is beyond the pale. Her claims fail as a matter of law and should be dismissed. So it's interesting that at the same time we're discussing why Wayfarer in effect should pay for Isabela Ferrer to not help them with their case equally as much as she's helping Blake Lively with her case. Isabela Ferrer expects her legal expenses to be paid, and to be paid when it's a fancy high-priced lawyer as well, and not one of Wayfarer's choosing as the employer. So is this worth reading? I'm just going to pause and have a quick squeeze through it. Right, so I don't want to give them a big portion of my video, so let's just break it down quickly. One of the main points is the fact of Jones Works is like an NY based firm, and one of the key things is that Jen Abel is trying to evoke California law is one of their main arguments. So let's just run through, because it's incredibly boring to go through it and I don't want to bring you down after a good Kevin Fritz letter. But basically, Stephanie Jones reiterates throughout this objection to paying for anything to do with Jen Abel. She points out smear campaign just like she's banging a drum or banging somebody's head against a wall over and over and over again. It's not so much evidence as framing, which we know is something that Blake likes to do in her legal filings. There's a lot of very lively astroturfing, shadow campaign, social manipulation, but it's words. It's a lot of words. We know that these PR people, in terms of the general conversation surrounding events, we know that sometimes they were inappropriate or they said stuff they probably regret in hindsight. But what human being has not done that, basically? And the thing is, it was a very difficult position to be in, wasn't it? Because you're working underneath Stephanie Jones, who you know or suspect is absolutely doing things that the client has specifically asked her not to do. You're responsible for this client and for getting a good outcome for that client, doing your job to the best of your ability, but you're fully aware that your boss is working in opposition to you, and that being like the underling, you're probably the most likely person that this is not going to work out well for when push comes to shove. So let's just break down the allegations. So I've got the main allegations that are repeated here. Abel ran an unsanctioned shadow campaign to smear Blake Lively. Abel is seeking indemnification from Jones Works for the smear campaign she carried out. So it bangs on about as if she's like a real kind of mastermind. You know what I mean? She was plotting away in her little office or whatever she was doing. Pursued her own career advancement by leading an unsanctioned smear campaign and pinning it on her employer. Conducting the very smear campaign at issue here. This is all quotes, direct things I've pulled from the document. Developed and executed, unbeknownst to Jones Works, a smear campaign to bury and destroy Lively. Abel and Nathan's smear campaign also included exploiting domestic violence survivor content, covering up Baldoni's on-set misconduct and planting negative news articles and social media content about Lively. And what's next? Negative smear campaign. This is just direct pulls from the language. Negative smear campaign Abel and Nathan were running their unsanctioned smear campaign for Wayfarer. Underlying these claims stems from Abel's development and deployment of the smear campaign. So you can see there's hefty allegations here, isn't it? It's very targeted language, and it is just literally, again, this is what we feel happened, or this is how it felt like when we found out about it afterwards. Coordinating the misconduct for which she seeks indemnification, an unsanctioned smear campaign for the very clients Wayfarer and Baldoni. And the next one, actively harmed by its association with Abel and her smear campaign despite having no knowledge of or involvement, that's Jones Works, interfering in the actions at issue, her smear campaign against Lively, and she engaged in an expressly disapproved smear campaign. The smear campaign, as you can see, is in it a lot. She embarked upon a smear campaign against Lively while simultaneously perpetrating her scheme against Jones Works. Abel's underhanded smear campaign and her associated plan to pillage and tear down Jones Works, participating in an astroturfing campaign to bury Lively in violation of California statutes prohibiting retaliation, intentionally inflicting emotional distress on Lively by engaging in social manipulation to destroy Lively's reputation. So all of that is in an effort to not fulfill her indemnity obligations to Jen Abel as her employee at the time. So it'd be interesting to see where all of this goes now. It feels like we are so behind now in terms of any orders. It's like this, the judges, there's so many things outstanding. There's so many things. Every so often it pops up and rules on something immediately, doesn't it? But other than that, there's a lot that's going ignored. And I know a lot of the content creators must be increasingly frustrated with the fact he's not responding to what they're saying about the subpoenas. And while we're talking kind of about indemnification and such, and you know, you've got Isabela now saying, I want sanctions against Wayfarer too. So this idea of sanctions, it's about time the judge really came out and stated his position on sanctions, and it could do with making a ruling as to sanctions are not going to be a thing in this thing, because if you're not going to give it to content creators, you certainly shouldn't be giving it to anybody else. You should be protecting the people that have less power, that have less money, you know. And it's like the whole thing with Isabela, you know, and her saying she has no role in this, but yet she's provided all this information to Blake. The only people that really have no role in all of this is the content creators that got dragged into it. So if anybody's motions for sanctions or reparations or whatever it is costs, it should be the content creators that get dealt with first, because they truly have just been reporting on what they've been seeing. So yeah, I think that is enough of a wrap for today. There's certain things that sometimes when I'm going through them, I think, I just don't want to go through all of this again. It just all seems so pointless. So Stephanie Jones clearly claims she has no culpability whatsoever for anything, that she was just this little angel floating around going la 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 and trying to be nice to everybody and serve her clients' needs and all of that. Meanwhile, we know what was going on. We know who she was talking to and all of that. But yeah, that is my little video for today, and I think that's long enough. It's certainly longer than I kind of wanted to do it. I kind of want to do this as because you kind of should make content, I guess, to what you want to be doing. We should all be doing this in life. You know, we often do these things to please other people. In terms of business, I think I've said it before that, in terms of business, it's the wrong idea to try and create the product that you think somebody wants. You should create the product that you want to create, that appeals to you, that fires you up and all of that. So when it comes to, in terms of what I want to make for you, it should appeal to me, to what I want to present to you. So I don't really want to do awful long videos for you, because I tend to get lost in the awful long videos. I admire people that do them, but it's not particularly my way of absorbing the information. I like it in nothing like, around 30 minutes if I can would be perfect. So I'm doing something a bit different tomorrow, which hopefully I'll be able to upload. I'm having a little collaboration with somebody in a chat about what's going on, get somebody else's perspective on it, and that will be interesting. So there'll be more details of that to come. But in the meantime, please do hit that like and subscribe and share if you're enjoying this content. And I am now in the YouTube Partner Program. Yay! So I have yet to go find out what that means. Probably more work, but there you go. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you later.